What does it mean to save versus to spend? The popular notion is that we live in a spending society that doesn't know how to save outside of the context of spending. It seems to us that things were always this way, but the concept of consumerism emerged around the 1960s. And if you look into the meaning of the word, there's an interesting paradox that emerges. On the one hand, consumerism is promoted for the interests and protection of the rights of the consumer, but on the other hand, consumerism is said to be the promotion of spending and producing excessively, without any regard to quality, need, or sustainability. In our consumer-driven culture, the money that you spend speaks to what you support. For example, if you support an artist, you pay for their work. Every time you spend money on a product or a business, you're telling them, keep doing what you're doing. Consumerism can be thought of as a democratic process. We're able to enable, perpetuate, or alternatively challenge our cultural norms through our spending habits. But what would happen if we lived in a country where some individuals had more votes to cast than others? Are there ways to offset such an obvious imbalance in how loudly some voices are heard?
One category of leisure spending that has developed in the 21st century is gaming. Mobile and online games have created a segue for pay-to-play culture. While it may seem as though mobile games are much cheaper than console games, according to CNBC, mobile spenders actually spend as much money as console spenders. This gamified manner of spending has made spending a more seamless process and is representational of a larger scope shift in how technology and the increasing gamifying of money can cause us to think less and less about each transaction.
Spending is becoming a thoughtless and invisible process. It's easy to swipe a credit card without much thought. It's even easier to click a button and send your funds across the interwebs, especially if your money is converted into some foreign online currency. While consumers have the option of buying only a few dollars worth of goods here and there, the immateriality and invisibility of spending really adds up. However, in the context of gaming, the increase in premium add-ons is not necessarily a bad thing. After all, game developers and content creators need a way to make money, and the people who have money to spend will spend it. One source tells us that for most free-to-play games, only a small percentage of players will become payers, and yet this small percentage is enough to support the developers and allow others to play for free.
From this perspective, a shift towards cultural spending and consumerism can give creators more freedom to develop work that everyone can enjoy and some will want to spend real money on. So, we see how consumerism can drive forward technological and cultural advancement and give us what we want. But are the things we want the same things that will protect us? Increased ease of spending can benefit creators sometimes, but not always. Maybe you have a friend that hates Walmart or some other large corporation, and understandably so given their history of squashing local competitors and creating a monopoly while also treating their workers poorly. But, as a consumer, big corporations offer you everything you want in a perfect package of convenience and efficiency. We all want to save, but we're led to believe that feeding large corporations is the way to save. While corporations appeal to what consumers want, there's no promise to protect the interests of creators of the goods being distributed, or to any potential innovators in the same market.
So consumers are faced with a dilemma of choosing between what is feasible and convenient to their own consumer interests, but also ethical in whatever sense of the word. As a consumer, it's easy to turn a blind eye to not-so-ethical practices, but consumerism isn't a one-way street. Everyone is a consumer by default, but many of us are also creators and workers at the other end. Without protecting the source of the goods, the interests of the consumer aren't fully protected. So the question becomes, how can we do both? How can we spend our money in such a way as to support what we want and save, while still being ethical and protecting the little man, and ultimately ourselves?
Well, nothing is ever black and white. It won't do to put our feet down and stop spending altogether. After all, shifts in consumer culture often make our lives easier. But we have to make sure that we aren't getting ahead of ourselves in the pursuit of what we think we want and need. The best thing we can do to protect ourselves from consumerism might be to not see ourselves as consumers in a market meant to feed us, but rather creators and contributors of goods and services that we have a part in promoting.
Created using Powtoon.